I know what you're thinking. What the bleep is that? Well, that is a Munro. It's an all-electric Scottish off-roader that cost £99,000 and looks like it was designed by people who think that Gore-Tex is a luxury fabric. Want to know why it's worth the money? Well, stay tuned to find out. Ah yes, the Munro M280. It's supposed to be the most hardcore off-roader this side of a Unimog, but it's been designed to last for 50 years rather than 5. And yes, the most powerful version, like this, with VAT, cost 99 grand. It's also properly Scottish, and it may be aesthetically challenging, but capable does not have to be pretty. So this better be really very capable. Here we go. That is genuinely impressive. I knew that'd happen. So why does this thing look like it was bought flat pack from automotive IKEA? Well, the Munro is the first car to be produced entirely in Scotland for some 40 years, and they've already got 250 orders, some 17 million quid's worth of stuff going on for this car. But the interesting thing about it is that it's not so much a car as a bulldozer or a combine harvester.
They're designed like machinery, not automotive, which have a much longer working life with one owner. If you purchase an asset like that, operators want it to last as long as possible. So it's mainly for stuff like forestry, agriculture, mining, mountain rescue, that sort of thing. So this thing is about as pared back and practical as it's possible to get. So there's a steel ladder chassis with a body stuck on top and aluminium panels, a bespoke Munro triple pod LFP 85 kWh battery driving through a mechanical four-wheel drive system with 3 locking diffs and a 2-speed transfer case. There's just one motor that comes in 2 power outputs, 375 brake horsepower and 516 pound-foot, or 228 brake horsepower and 442 pound-feet, both with the same 170-mile real-world range. Then there are beam axles and coil springs, and you can have it in a variety of body styles, from pickup to truck to bare cab and chassis, ready to fit whatever you need to fit. But you can buy one for the school run if you really want. So it's a ruggedized patchwork of new and old school. It might look like it was designed entirely in straight lines, but flat panels are easy to fix and replace.
And the same goes for the inside. This isn't exactly like a car, and certainly not like the fake glam of most of the electric 4x4s out there. It is incredibly simple. It's a straight big plane of a dash that's painted with that heavy duty paint. You've got low gear ratio gearbox, neutral and high, and then basically a push button, drive, neutral and reverse. It is very simple to operate, and everything is basically dustproof, shockproof and waterproof. Yes, it's got heated seats and electric windows, but this is a practical space for practical people. You could literally hose down this interior and let it air dry. It does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but there's a distinct lack of massive screens and stupid piano black plastics.
Even the back is just a workspace with LED lights and a solid bulkhead.
Are you getting the Munro vibe yet? These are proper hiking boots for actual mud, rather than fancy trainers you can't run in.
But all of this focus is useless if the Munro can't actually cut it off-road, or in the kind of situations in which owners will expect it to perform. So I thought I'd give it death and see if it survives.
On the road, it's fine. I mean, it's not a dynamic powerhouse or anything. There is quite a lot of lean when you go around a corner. And it does feel a little bit like a 50s B movie in that you're on a straight road and you can put in quite big steering inputs and it doesn't really affect the trajectory of the car. But once you're used to that, it's actually just a really nice, usable off-roader. Certainly nothing that would scare anybody. It's got 280 brake horsepower and about 500 pounds-feet of torque, so it's quick enough. It won't be beating a sports car, but for getting between job sites, you know, if you're doing 20, 30 miles between places that you need to work, it's actually really comfortable. Weirdly, this car has quite a lot more space than something like an older Defender. There's a couple of inches this side, much more space in the middle. It's got 3 seats in the back. This is actually quite a practical car. The thing is, it does feel compromised. It is deliberately compromised to be better at off-road than on. The fact this car has focus doesn't bother me. The thing is, it's got to be good off-road then. Otherwise, this compromise isn't worth it.
But it's here, in the wonderful Scottish countryside, that the Munro should really be able to show what it's about. By the way, Munro is the Scottish word for mountain. So all of this is very appropriate.
The old fear of water and electricity. Well, the Munro has an in-house made LFP battery that's actually in 3 modules that are slung between the chassis rails in the back of the car, quite low to keep the centre of gravity down. And it's also got some very trick thermal management systems that keep the battery at the right temperature and therefore keep it healthy. It's also got a bi-directional heat pump which can make efficient use of either heat or cold. So let's face it, keeping it waterproof shouldn't really be that much of a problem. And yes, it's got 130 kilowatts of DC charging ability, so you'll see 15 to 80% in about half an hour on a big enough charger. And there's a 7 kilowatt AC charger for overnights, so it will charge pretty much as fast as any modern EV. But what about hills? Well, the Munro actually has pretty aggressive approach and departure angles and a not bad breakover angle, so it should be able to cope with hills no problem. Plus it's got loads of electric torque. But if I'm on a really steep slope like this, with lots of loose material, and I come to a complete stop and then lift off the brake, it will target 2 miles an hour and just do it. So it's got hill descent control. And this is a big, rutted, awful thing with very close sides. It's a good thing this thing's got basically armoured paint on it. And I'll tell you what, doesn't electric work really well for off-road? The instant torque, the fact that you're getting traction out of all 4 wheels straight away. You know what though, there's a hill here and it's basically wet grass. And if it can get up that, it's doing well. That is genuinely impressive. The Munro is a bit of an oddity in that it picks what works best from old and new technologies and combines them into a kind of ultimate mix. So you've got coil springs, beam axles, diff locks, front, centre and rear, but then you've got an electric motor and it's only a single electric motor. So electric is really good for off-road, but the other stuff is tried and tested. It's more that you could bang it straight if it got bent. And that works when you're in an extreme environment. This car, and its off-road bias, don't forget, doesn't try and be all things to all people. It's got a defined purpose and it sticks to it. And that's what I like. The mission statement is quite specific, but the Munro sticks to it. And it does it really well. And yes, there is heavy-duty underbody protection and loads of shackles dotted around the car for recovery. So it's built to be abused.
The Munro seemed to take pretty much all of the hardcore stuff in its stride, but it's still quite an odd one. So earlier in the day, I had a quick chat with the founder and CEO.
So where did the idea for this come from?
It started as a bit of a passion project, if I'm honest. I've always been a big fan of classic Land Rovers. I always liked electric vehicles, and I thought, well, what if we could do a Land Rover that's an electric vehicle? We were planning to do something that was like lifestyle, like a lifestyle brand, but actually there was so much overwhelming support and outreach from commercial fleet operators that said, hey, I've got this real problem, like I've electrified my vans and my cars, I can't electrify my 4x4s, there's just not suitable vehicles on the market. And the project kind of evolved from there. First kind of outreach we had was from a lot of utility companies, water, electricity. They said to us, all we want is our old Land Rovers back. But Land Rovers moved away from this commercial market. So they're never going to get an electrified version of what they class as like the ultimate 4x4. And that was basically where we span from.
So did you start actually having Land Rovers that were electric and then thought we can do a better job, or it's a different job?
As we started looking into it, we realised that platform, not really up for the job of a modern vehicle, not really any safety features, very thin chassis rails, so not particularly structural either. And you add the weights of batteries and motors, they just weren't up for the job anymore. So we started from scratch pretty early on to say, right, if we're going to reimagine that era of vehicle, not just Land Rover, but other tough 4x4s from that era, what would they look like? And this is what we came up with.
So is that why it's got this weird mix of like next-gen electric powertrain and then quite rugged drivetrain? Is that where that came from?
We wanted to keep the vehicle as familiar as possible for people that wanted an off-road truck. So we picked a ladder frame with solid axles, a central transfer box with mechanical locking differentials. We want to keep that really familiar, not just for drivers, but also for servicing. It's really important that these vehicles can be serviced easily, and we didn't want to give the fleet managers and the people that are buying these vehicles headaches about learning new technology. So that's pretty much why it's so mechanical and straightforward.
Where are people using them? Like you say mining, like I'm assuming that an electric vehicle in an underground mine would be really useful.
Absolutely. So we've got a little bit of way to go before we can get the vehicle certified for underground mining, but at the moment we're talking to a lot of overground, above ground mines and quarries in the UK and Northern Europe that have a real headache, operational headache, which is they've got huge targets to decarbonise, but their mining operations are so carbon intensive that there's only limited opportunities to decarbonise. But this is a really easy way to decarbonise their operations.
And I suppose if you're treating this like a piece of plant, like a bulldozer or something, if you've only got to make it once and then maybe replace the battery in 10 years, your lifetime CO2 is way better, right?
Well, actually the CO2, even including the manufacturing of the vehicle, pays back in about 2 years versus a combustion engine vehicle. We actually commissioned a study on this quite early on to make sure that we could answer that question with a lot of confidence. But over and above that, this vehicle is designed to last much longer than other vehicles that you'd normally see in these areas. So typically in overground mining and utility companies, the vehicles after 5 or 6 years are just kind of beyond economical repair. Yeah. We wanted to make a platform that could last more like 15 or 20 years before you had to start having that conversation. We've done that through modularity, repairability, and also we're starting to look at refurbishment schemes as well.
So if I fixed this on site myself, would it invalidate my warranty?
No, not at all. Not at all. We actually provide all documentation for the vehicle. We allow people to do their own servicing, even own minor repairs. All we ask is that we can come and inspect the vehicle once a year just to make sure you're taking care of it, and then we'll uphold the warranty.
I've got to ask, why does it look like that?
It's brutal, and I can see why people are a little bit shocked when they first see it or a bit overwhelmed by it. The honest answer is it's really easy for us to manufacture. We wanted to make sure that the barriers for us making this a success were as low as possible. And one of the biggest barriers that automotive manufacturers face is capital expenditure for tooling, stamping, creating body panels. That's really, really expensive. So what we wanted to do was create a design that was so simple to produce and also really, really easy to repair. And that's why it's so angular and so straightforward. It's because we don't need any specialist tooling.
Then when you're working with it, you can bend it straight again with a hammer.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually the design lends itself that if you do damage it, it doesn't really look out of place. It can take a few knocks and bangs and it actually still looks pretty good.
It gets more characterful. Also, is it really Scottish?
Actually, yes, you'd be surprised. So we use a lot of local suppliers, particularly for the structural elements like the steel for the chassis and the body. Wherever possible, we'll use as close to home as possible. So things like the seating and certain mechanical bits as well on the vehicle are Scottish. And actually, if you look at the vehicle as a whole, the supply chain is about 80% UK based as well.
Which is mega.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual, and we work with a lot of small independent suppliers, which it presents its own supply chain security problems, but we believe that's better for the economy and the environment.
It's a really interesting one, this. They've ended up with a serious bit of kit, albeit a pretty costly one. The more powerful M280 comes in at £82,495 without VAT. The M170, £69,662, again without VAT. So that's 20% on those prices if you're not a business user. But based on the operational cycles, do you want to buy a 40 grand truck twice or an 80 grand truck once?
But the thing I really love about the M-Class is its absolute clarity of purpose. This thing wasn't designed to satisfy the SUV crowd or even try, because every decision made in this car is to do with utility, ability and competence. Yes, it is a bit challenging looking. Some would say ugly. And if you don't use the 4x4 bit, even 50% of the time, it's probably a bit much. But there's something really satisfying about a car that completely hits its mission statement, and that is this vehicle. So, the Munro, it's not for everybody, but those that find a use for it are going to absolutely love it. This is a car that is not for showing off, it's for showing up, and that is really cool. Could you drive one of these on the daily? Let me know in the comments.